Hello everybody and welcome to a Misfit artist tutorial on concept art. That is right, you love it, I love it, most of us love it. I'm sure someone out there doesn't like it. We can have a talk with them later, but concept art is obviously a crucial part of any production, whether it is comics, animation, or even live action filming of stuff. It is useful to have concept art going into those projects. But there's a little bit of misconceptions, I think, with concept art. And some people, I think, are trying to draw concept art and it's not catching people's eyes the way they want it to, or even them, they're like, I don't feel like I'm making progress in what I want to do. So I'm going to talk about a couple little ideas with concept art that may be able to help you get further. But I want to break down 3 types of concept art that I think of. And the first one, I don't really think should be called concept art. It's more like a turnaround or reference material. And there's a couple versions of it, obviously. You have a sketch phase. This right here from the Naruto manga is, just line art. And it's used as reference. It's still great art, obviously. And you can make this stuff better by adding gestures and different facial expressions and experiment with what the character can get across. Up here is a few less turnarounds, but more rendered. Again, very useful. You have colors. If I was working on this show, I could, or game, I don't know. I think it's from the game, not the show. I can come in and literally pick the colors, and boom, I have that right away. If I was working on the production and someone said, hey, draw me something of this character, swinging the sword, I'm like, great. I can come in and already I can literally trace to make sure I'm on model and get the size of the eyes. I can do all this stuff. If I am using it to learn to make fan art, probably shouldn't trace it, but I have all this right here, and without tracing the whole character flat out, I can very quickly be like, okay, do I want to make sure I'm matching the style? How many heads tall is he then? And get these proportions worked out. Very useful tools. But again, when I think of what I like, my favorite type of concept art and what helps me make progress in a story, it's not this. So the second kind, and what I really like, and what I've been doing a lot of lately, is character-focused / story concept art. So obviously, turnarounds are still character-focused, but this stuff is going to be characters in action. So again, if you're thinking horror concept art, action, fantasy stuff, eventually you're going to be wanting to do this. And I chose mostly examples for this one, examples from the Star Wars Mandalorian show, because I think most of us, anyone that watched it remembers the credits going by showing the concept art, and we're like, wow, look at that girl. There were some examples in the show where it was more abstract or gestural, less refined, and I want to talk about that a little bit. But the focus here, it's not. You can still use this and be like, oh, is this character on model? I don't know if that's the exact proportions of the armor. I don't think, and it's, I have it compressed here, but I don't think this face really looks quite like Ahsoka, how she normally appears. But again, that's not really the point. This one we're seeing, again, not quite exactly how they show up on screen, but, the vibe of the whistling birds or whatever his darts were. You're seeing the action, and even, the stormtroopers even. They don't have facial expressions, but I feel like this guy here, you can tell that they're like, okay, this shot, they're going to be like, whoa, what's going on? Up here we have a very clear representation without trying to spoil the show, but you can see, Mando, our main character, he's the main character, but he's kind of pushed to the background. He's isolated by the interaction that these two Force sensitive potential Jedi are having with each other. And that, you know, again, we're going to get into this a little bit later, and you see the setting that they're in. The colors are telling part of the story. How the colors affect our base colors. So again, this is where you can kind of come in and, you know, one will affect the other. You have your base colors from your turnaround, and I'm sure that they used them as starting points here, and then they took the background and said, okay, how do the colors connect? What's the vibe? A big part of this, I feel like, is that concept art should focus, sometimes, it's not hard fast rules, but focus on the vibe over the strict nitty-gritty of proportion and being on model. And also, again, don't overdo the detail. Again, this was for a big I don't know the budget, but thousands, probably millions of dollar show. And you can tell there's trees back there, but all these trees are basically just like lines, and you just have these suggestions of hills going on. That's not super done art. They focused on, again, the interaction between the characters. Here we have a great example of, again, is all the ice super rendered out? No, it's not. And in fact, you look back to some of these spiders, and they start to kind of just become blobs of color and shapes. But you have, you know, again, what I think is the vibe of this scene. We have a character who's carrying something on their back, not looking like much of a fighter. We have one dude with a gun trying to kind of manage the situation, and they're being chased by this swarm. No one cared how many spiders. No one looked at the guy and said, "Okay, Jim, we need you to draw, 12 spider monsters up here and up here and up here." They just said, "Hey, I imagine he was in a boardroom, with a director or a story writer, and they were just kind of like ideating stuff out. And he did a sketch of this, which would probably looked more like, what if we had the Mando kind of here, shooting his gun, with Frog Girl in the foreground, and then we just have all these spiders coming from this opening in the cave." And I'm sure it still looked better than this, but he was just like, what if, they were just coming up and crawling around and going, "Arr!" And someone looked at that, and they said, "You know what? I think that seems really cool," especially if he just kind of did some really simple perspective going on here. Maybe draw a big shape in there for scale and depth. And that's kind of what kicked that off. And again, if we look at this is really fun. This is actually more of a storyboard than like strict concept art. But again, this is kind of what I think of and what I've been enjoying and what I think will make your art take off a little bit more. You have this thing that's like a clear pose of this character hunched over, probably tired, holding, these props and this costuming that's just, kind of cool. That's the thing. It has all the fun and cool bits of like, oh, this is a new character and I'm interested. But it's also like, that's an oversized weapon. What's going on there? With a clear pose, and then just this light, these effects coming off the background. So again, when you turn that off, you have a cool pose. I imagine mostly on model. And people see that and they go, "Ooh, what's going on?" And especially if you pair that up with like the next shot, that's getting people interested. Because the problem with, trying to post this stuff and using this as your when you go into like pitch your show and everything, you need to have this to show that you can work with your team, you have things on model, you have that stuff worked out. But it's not as striking as the depth, the perspective, the action poses of this more character and narrative driven concept art. And that's kind of the big thing, is like concept. Think about that word. A concept. If you're trying to explain the concept of something, what are you explaining? You're explaining the story of something. The concept of the Mandalorian is the this race that we've known has existed in Star Wars for a while, and we said, what if we follow a Mandalorian bounty hunter? And at some point in the pitch meeting, they said, well, what's the story going to be like? What if it's a found family thing? What if he adopts this alien son or daughter? I don't really know what Grogu is. I think Grogu is a male. So that's the story. The story and the concept go together, and you can tell parts of the story in character design. Obviously, you should be little things like a bandage that's like tattered on the pants, this cargo pseudo military ragtag things they got going on. These bolted together shoes. That tells you things about the world and about this character, the hairstyle, the hourglass design on the face, that literally stamping a character with story. Naruto again. You're looking, you're seeing this child with this poofy jacket, and it's not form fitting, but it's kind of like athletic wear. It has all this symbology on him. There's story being told there, but it's out of context. And one of the things that I think us young artists, I'm looking at me trying to keep myself young, in the internet generation are getting wrong is that we think that we're going to show someone a picture of our character. I'm going to show someone a picture of Flopsy and Arrow, the heroes of our story, and I'm going to be like, it's a story about them just doing their best. And it's like, yes, that's going to get some people interested, especially if it's cool art. But if you're relying solely on the level of refinement in your art, that's not how you tell a story, really. And story is what's going to get people invested. Of course, if you're drawing horror, sure, design the scariest monster you can. But again, what makes something scary? Context and story. But if you're just like, hey, here is my character standing in, basic, just standing there with his arms on his side, that's not gonna entice very many people, even if it's like a great drawing. They're like, oh, you're such a good artist. But they have no reason to read that comic. Now, the last kind of concept art I want to go over involves, again, story and environmental storytelling. And you can see that in some of this stuff, but like, these two shots especially, they're really cool and they're great. And they tell story very well. And it's like tight on the character. If it's not focused on the character, it doesn't matter. There's like lampshades here and everything, but like I could just, actually, you know what? I was going to say, I can probably just fill this in, and it's going to be probably almost as enticing. Yeah. Because again, the focus is this character. I can block out big swaths of this, and it's still pretty dang cool. That could have been on the white background, just as cool. This stuff, again, there's a little bit more going on where you're getting story, so you can't take it out. But it's like ice planet. Okay, cool. Ice, cold, danger. These things here are more detailed backgrounds, which, again, I found detailed stuff. You can do this in a sketch phase, I think, too. But Little Nightmares, for example. This, it's so much is going on here. It's a game. You're showing very much how the game feels to play, because the game is it's kind of like Resident Evil. It has a relatively fixed camera angle, this platform aesthetic, so you have your character climbing up something in this awkward part of the screen sometimes, so you can see all the craziness of the boat and the monsters that are hovering around, and like, that's the thing. This provides another one of my talking points was relativity, scale, and especially the relativity part here. You have your character existing in the world to an extent. How big is this character? What's going on in the world? What's their color palette versus the rest of it? The main character in Little Nightmares is in this bright yellow raincoat. Everything else is kind of desaturated and dingy feeling, except this character. It tells you things like, oh, this isn't where they're supposed to be. Something's not right. And even more so by the fact that the environment is so big compared to them. In fantasy, big stuff makes such a big deal because it's just alien, it's different. That's what we go to fantasy for. In Sekiro, I couldn't find a good example of it in concept art, but the vastness of these FromSoft games. Giant castles, giant cathedrals. In Sekiro, they have these huge Buddha statues just kind of chilling out, which does multiple things. One, sets you in that Japanese aesthetic, which is obviously a big part of Sekiro. But also, it shows you how fantastic the world can be if you're so small in it. There's so much space for so much more. You get monsters, these giant animals, stuff like that. So when you're sitting here and you can see your character and you see the distance and how big that building is, it makes you feel insignificant and like there's just it's so boundless. It's also night, which sets the tone. The environment backdrops are priceless, obviously, and we're not all great background artists. There's a reason why Pipeline has multiple people doing different things, but it's worth learning. If you don't have to be great at it, but if you're working on a project somewhat independently, or if you're leading a project, be able to do a little bit just to show your other artist what's the scale, what's the vibe. Again, vibe is very important here. Here's another piece from some of the Arcane artwork. And again, this is so simple. It's just it's akin to giving Echo the frickin' hourglass on this face a sign that just says pure air. What does that tell you right now? Pure air is a commodity. That is something that is in demand, or even if it's not a commodity, it is a pleasure. It is an indulgence. And you see these shapes in the foreground, which again, depth, foreground, perspective. It's just going to do a lot of cool stuff. You don't really know what this is, but it's just this metal, Victorian, weird aesthetic going on. Neon lights. Neon tells a lot. It's very, if you're on High Street, at 11 p.m., those street lights start coming on, you get those lit up signs trying to draw you in, and the pink mixed with the red and the darkness makes it feel kind of like a red light district somewhere you're not supposed to be. And that's the thing, it's colorful too. It's dark and kind of scary, but there's color to it, and that's just really cool. Let me take a look, see if there's anything else I want to talk about. Change in contrast, yeah, that was another part I wanted to go over, which give me just a minute. So we're working on a couple projects right now related to HitCam, and this is one of the concept arts I'm working on. It's kind of halfway between, and this is a great sheet I think to have. This shows professionalism and that you're thinking about the scale of your character and everything, but I want it to have, and you're thinking about how your clothing fits on. This is good to have. This stuff over here, not too interesting. This over here, I think, is a lot of fun. But the thing that was happening here is that I was going on a journey, and I have paper doodles of what I was thinking of too. But I needed to get some things down on paper, be like, okay, this is what they are, this is what they do, da 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 da, and exploring things like what stories can I tell. I hope a lot of people are like, oh, it's a pirate just because I gave the one dude the trifold hat. She has the puffy sleeves. And this thing, I don't want them to feel like they're part of or at least this side over here on the left, I don't want them to feel like they're part of an organized military, but I want them to feel like warriors, fighters, but they're very much on their own, doing their own thing. But you can see the role, some of the story that I'm telling with our male character up here. He has a crossbow. He has a shield that, as you can see from the lower right, is designed so that almost like a riot shield kind of thing. He can reach around and shoot. He has an axe on him. He has this dragon skull on his shoulder. So obviously, killed a dragon. He has some scars. He's been battle worn. Our girl down here, to contrast, she is more slender. She uses rapier and dagger versus his axe and his crossbow. So she's more of a finesse character. And then I want to show them working together. So again, the relationships, the differences. Just like anything, when you're designing a character, contrast is useful. When you're trying to make concept art that tells a story, what's going on here? Even, getting into this map we have, and because the location that these characters are in is kind of important for our story. Again, this is art that's more for us, but I think it does tell a little bit of story here. She's originally from down here, and you can see we drew deserts and these kind of more mysterious stuff down here. So, differences going on. Differences in how they dress. The markings on her face. She's not scarred. Well, she has a chipped horn, so again, battle worn. But she has these markings that she's more exotic. And part of the story is that he ends up joining this town guard situation. And so we drew him in a very relatively different setup. I can do more to show that he's in like a breastplate, but it's tighter. He has his belt and his satchels going on. He has this, instead of his skull thing, he has a little I don't know what the word is, like a little pseudo cape up there. His shield is strapped to his back. He doesn't have an axe just in his waistline. And you can tell he's like, I don't know if I like this getup. So that's a big part of stuff like this. At least I think if you can show the journey your character is going on, if that's part of the story, I mean, make concept art that shows that. And yeah, even if you're not showing concept art that has a lot of stuff going on, like this right here, this is a piece of concept art that is one monster. And I did a few things. I wanted to make sure I worked on a silhouette, so I'll go into that in a little bit. But the whole point of this guy here is he's a spider wolf. I just wanted to combine spiders and wolves because I thought it'd be scary and fun. So ideally, if I'm going to use this character, I need turnarounds and all that good stuff. But I wanted to, again, work on the vibe. Greens. Green make it feel poisonous and kind of alien again. The growling, this idea that he's creeping like towards you. A little bit of perspective and overlap going on here. Not much, but a little bit. It just makes it feel like he's creeping and stalking something. And that tells you a lot about the character. More than if I just had a face up here and just said, oh, so he's going to have, 6 eyes. It does tell you things, but then I want to do this and this. If I tried to make it like a very neutral expression, it can still show you something, but it's not showing you much. Again, this is very, very simple. So one of the tricks I did here to make this go really fast is it's all of the character art stuff is clipped to my base layer here. So as I turn things off, I colored on my base layer, but if I come in here and I just fill it with one color, there's still a lot of silhouette going on. He's kind of overlapped, so maybe some of the silhouette is lost, but all these sharp angles and everything reaching out again tells a lot right there. So, and this, it's not really a concept art thing, but things like that really help. So if I unclip my sketch layer, because that's the thing, I sketched first, obviously. We have this, which is still really cool. I'm really a fan of some of this line art. But as soon as I clip that down, it's just so much cleaner. And then you just turn this little bit of border on to get a little bit more of the outline. Boom. This is a great tool to use if you're trying to bang out a lot of concept art. And again, you're trying to keep that loose, chill vibe. It really helps, I think. So I hope that y'all enjoy this. If you have any questions, please do comment. We love talking to y'all. If there's more concept art from us you want to see, or if any of the shows that I kind of started to look at here, you want more breakdowns on art styles going into them. I mean, obviously not just shows, comics, anime, video games. A lot of cool art in video games. Ace is getting into 3D modeling. I used to do 3D in college. Wouldn't mind getting back into it. So if you want us to break down some stuff going on in some 3D shows, let's rock and roll. But until next time, y'all be safe, have fun, keep making stuff up. Bye bye.